Hi there guys, welcome to BoxPred and thank you for tuning in. I want to talk about the huge fight that's happening tonight, or the early hours of tomorrow morning, between Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward. Kovalev's putting all of his light heavyweight world titles on the line. This really is a pound for pound type of fight, where we're seeing two guys at the top of the sport, certainly two guys at the top of their division, going against each other. This is what we really like to see, and this is why it's got quite a buzz about it. It's what everyone's talking about at the moment, obviously. So I wanted to give my thoughts on the fight. So let's just look at each fighter separately and then bring them together and take a look at how I think this plays out. So the champion, Kovalev, he, for me, kind of burst on the scene when he defeated Nathan Cleverly, stopped him very handily, quite easily. And since then we've grown to learn that this guy is a real force. Kovalev is a very heavy-handed fighter. He's got good power. He's got a good KO percentage. He has a really good jab. He uses his reach. He is good at maintaining and dictating a distance that suits him and his style and the way he wants to fight. He has been kind of compared with Gennady Golovkin, who is similarly has a high KO ratio, is knocking guys out left, right and centre. But I actually think they're kind of different in the way they go about things. I think Golovkin is far more of a really cut off the ring and get in your face type of fighter, whereas Kovalev does it in a more subtle manner. And I think that while he does like to cut off the ring, he likes to be on the front foot and put pressure on you. He's not a kind of in-your-face fighter. He doesn't want to be inside with you. He just wants to use his jab and set up straight shots and set up some good hooks. He really sets up his punches really well, sets up his combinations well. He really sort of sets it up to make it perfect for him, so he knows when to go on full attack mode. But he doesn't kind of, like Golovkin for me, does a similar thing, but he really does get up quite close and personal sometimes, and he really wants to put a lot of real pressure on you. And for me, he's willing to mix it up a little bit more, whereas I think Kovalev is a bit more calculated in terms of he wants to keep you on the end of his reach, and he wants to dictate from that pace, from that stance. Obviously, the thing with a guy like Golovkin is he's quite versatile, so he does a bit of both, but I just think there are a little bit of difference there, which I believe kind of plays a part in this fight. That's why I mention it. So yeah, Kovalev, good balance, maintains balance while he's punching, which is always a good sign. Quite often you see heavy hitters who will punch hard, but they lose quite a lot of balance, and they lunge in quite a lot. So they're kind of there for the taking if you get a good counter puncher or someone's willing to be patient and lure them in. I think that's possible at times against Kovalev, like it is with any guy who really wants to come forward and look to go in for the kill. But I think basically, whereas I see Golovkin as a seek and destroy, I see Golovkin as a kind of a seek and destroy light version, if you can call it that. It sounds like I'm saying he's a bit weaker, but I don't mean that. I mean that he will take more of a less upfront approach sometimes. Maybe you disagree, but that's just the way I see it. So yeah, he's got slight reach advantage in this fight, which he can try and use to his advantage, and he usually does with that good solid jab. And I think the jab is going to be a key for him in this fight, in setting up his shots. And straight shots are going to be, they're his forte really, and that's really his advantage, one of his strengths that goes into this fight. Rather than advantage, I'd say strength. So let's look at Ward. Andre Ward is we know what he's about. He's very skillful. He can fight outside or inside. I've heard it be said that I've heard people saying that they don't think he should be outside in this fight. They actually think he'll lose the fight if he fights an outside fight. And a lot of the recommendations are for Ward to fight an inside fight. Now, while I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, and I would go along with that to a certain extent, I actually think he can win the fight from the outside. Obviously, Kovalev likes a distance, so that's where you're kind of playing into his hands there. But if you look at a recent article posted by Sky, which was basically a mini interview thing with Carl Froch. Now, we can't take Carl Froch's word as gospel, we all know this, but it seemed pretty genuine, and he's talking about when he was in the ring with Andre Ward and what he took from it. And you have to remember that Froch was quite bitter after that fight because he didn't feel like he'd been in the fight. But there are some telling things that he said in that interview, which I really think stand true about Ward. Is that he came out of that fight feeling like he hadn't been in one. He felt like he hadn't hit Ward, and Ward hadn't really hit him. And he just felt, but then he would come out the ring and people were saying he was completely outclassed. That's really testament to the guy, to Ward, I think, that he can beat guys so convincingly without there really being that much exchange. You know, that's really a testament to a really technically sound fighter. We always bring it up, but you see it with Mayweather. It's frustrating to watch sometimes. It's not the most exciting style to watch, but it's very effective. And only, very rarely you get fighters who can actually do that. I think Bernard Hopkins is another one who I've compared Ward to before. They're able to do subtle things in the ring and use their technique and their experience to actually do things that other boxers just can't do. They resist the temptation to engage. They're very calculated. They're very patient. They're very cautious to an extent. But they pick and time their shots, and they use their opponents. It's a classic sort of martial arts theory, I guess. They use their opponent's strength against them. There's more than one way to win a fight. There's more than one way to knock guys out. There's more than one way to put damage on an opponent. And one of the best things you can do is actually let an opponent come on, and as they're going through with an aggressive attack, you can use their momentum against them, and actually land a counter of yourself, of your own, while moving laterally. And that can be really effective, because you take the Manny Pacquiao stoppage when he got knocked out by Marquez. A lot of that was to do with not just the power on Marquez's punch, but it was the timing because of the momentum that Pacquiao had going forward. If you've got two vehicles coming together, then just think, if a vehicle's stationary and a vehicle hits it at 30 mile an hour, then that's going to have some impact. But if this vehicle is already coming in the opposite direction, doing 10 mile an hour, it's going to be that much more of a damage. So really, you can use the opponent's momentum against them and their own strength against them, and that's something that perhaps Ward could look to employ in this fight. I don't know, but it's just something to consider. The other thing that Froch was saying was that he was very surprised. From the outside, he couldn't touch Ward. He said he was too quick for him. He said, granted, a lot of people had speed on Froch. He accepted that. It wasn't new to him that he had an opponent in front of him who was quicker than him. But he said he literally couldn't land a punch on him. He was just too slick, too good in defence. And that's something to consider as well. We all think, Kovalev's a very good attacking focused fighter, very good on offence, and maybe he's good enough to get past that barrier. But it's, Ward is not going to be there for the taking. He's not the type of guy who sticks his chin in the air. He's not the type of guy who's easy to hit. And on top of that, he employs defensive techniques that's, once you get past, it's not just a basic type of try to hit the guy if he hasn't got his hands up or if he's not defending himself with his arms. He will employ other tactics to get out of the way. He's got good reflexes. I expect Ward to be the sharper fighter in this fight, to be a bit quicker than Kovalev is, he needs to employ that in this fight to get around Kovalev's work, and really to try and shine through himself with his work. And the other thing Froch said was that he always usually could match pretty much anyone for strength, close up strength, and he did a lot of MMA and stuff to try and build on that. And Froch was something he prided himself in. But he said we were very surprised. The one thing he was really surprised about with Ward was how strong Ward was, particularly on the inside. And I think that's something we mustn't underestimate in this fight. It's something that really tainted my thoughts of this fight when it was first announced. Obviously, really, through his pro career, we've known Ward predominantly as the super middleweight, going through the Super 6 and doing all this great business there and cleaning out the division pretty much with whoever would fight him. But But now he's up at like heavyweight, and we're instantly thinking, well, Kovalev's a big. You kind of think of him as a big light heavyweight. He's knocking light heavyweights out left, right, and centre. He's big and strong at light heavyweight. So my automatic default was to shift to the thoughts of, this is a guy moving up in weight against a really big puncher. This is going to be dangerous. It's not going to work out. But then, of course, you have to look at the facts and reality. In that Andre Ward campaigned at light heavyweight, won his Olympic gold medal at light heavyweight, and actually, another thing that Frost mentions is he feels that Ward was kind of slowing down towards the end of their fight, but he feels that maybe because he was perhaps draining himself to get down to super middleweight. So I feel like Ward is moving up to his right weight now. This is actually his correct weight. He started off at the lowest he could do, and now he's moving up. And I think he looks like at a more natural weight for his body. The height difference, there's no height difference here. They're both the same height. In fact, if I looked at the weigh-in, it looked like Ward was slightly taller than Kovalev, but I don't know what footwear they were wearing at the time. So I can't really go by that. But the measurements, really, they're both 6 foot, I think. And Kovalev, like I said, has a slight reach advantage in this by about 1.5 inches. So really, the size, there's not really a big size differential here. And so that has led people to say, Ward can do the inside game, and that's really what he should look to do here, because Kovalev doesn't fight inside. He's not known for his inside fighting. He likes to keep you on the end of a jab. He likes to, he's got a punishing jab, and he likes to wear you down and then push you back, and then eventually he will finish you. He'll come through with straight shots. He's accurate. He's powerful. What Ward needs to do is he needs to start off perhaps a bit cautiously, like fighters usually do, but he's going to probably want to really stamp his authority in the fight and kind of show what he's got. And I don't think Ward's really concerned about Kovalev's power that much. He'll respect Kovalev's power like he respects everyone's. He's not the type of fighter who switches between fights. He's mentioned this already. The lead up to this fight is the same as any other fight. That's what you want from a fighter. You don't want fighters getting too hyped for particular fights because it puts too much pressure on them. You want a guy who respects each fight equally, and knows that with any opponent he can get taken out. It's boxing, and that's really the mentality you need to have going into a boxing ring. That any time could be your number, could be up in terms of getting hurt, getting stunned, getting beat, potentially stopped. And I think Ward understands that. And he's not going into this fight thinking there's any more particular risk than there is in other fights, because his hazard management is already at peak for every fight. So I think Kovalev needs to be a bit wary of Ward, because I think this is boxing. Ward has not the type of power Kovalev has exhibited, but he does have power. He can hurt you with a punch, especially inside if he gets some quick sneaky shots in there. Kovalev needs to show him some respect to a certain degree, because I could see a scenario where Kovalev gets caught off guard and actually gets hurt by Ward. You may laugh at that, but I think it's a distinct possibility, and don't put it past the realms of possibilities in this fight that Ward actually really hurts Kovalev, and if Kovalev's in the wrong position at the wrong moment, potentially stops him. You don't have to have great power to stop guys. You just have to have the timing and the technique, and that's something that Ward certainly has. He's hurt guys before, he's put them down. Kovalev's no different, but I would say Kovalev to me seems to have good chin, good punch resistance, so we have to give him credit in that area. And finally, from what Froch said, is that he was asked about Ward, and he was saying that Ward is kind of like Mayweather in that he will be in the who wants him and who wants to beat him type club, where people will tune in to see him get beat. They're not going to respect him if he beats Kovalev. Some people aren't anyway. They're never going to respect him until they just want to see him get beat because he's going to be another unbeaten fighter. But let's bear in mind Kovalev is unbeaten as well here, so let's not twist things. Both of these guys are unbeaten. Both guys have got that to lose. Both guys are unbeaten for a reason, and it's a very competitive fight. But he went on to say, Froch, that he doesn't think that Ward will ever be beaten, and that's all speculation. Obviously, it's a matter of opinion, subjectivity. But I think that in this fight, I think that there's the potential here. We're all excited for the fight. We want to see some good action, but I think there's just the potential. We've seen it throughout history, and it happens all the time when you've got a really, really technically sound guy who goes up against a guy who is let's say, less technically sound at the current time, and it ends up being a bit of a ball fest. It ends up being a bit one-sided, and once I think that there's the potential that if Ward gets his way early on, if he starts settling into the fight really well, then it could be a bit of a boring night, just going straight on to a Ward decision victory. And that's what I'm going to pick in this fight. I'm going to go for Andre Ward to win by decision. But another thing, a caveat, is that Kovalev can box. Kovalev is skillful. I've mentioned it before. He's not this grunt who's going in there and people are making him out like, it's just about the power. Kovalev's got a very, a brilliant jab, a good boxing mind. He cuts people off methodically. He's not just he's got a brain in there. He's not some guy who's just going to go swinging, me boxer, me take head off type thing. He's going to be calculated in his attack. Ward's going to have his hands full, to say the least. And Kovalev has got the type of power to stop anyone. And Ward has to be extremely careful. If he gets caught, it could, it's going to be all over. He really needs to be careful. But then look at Chilemba in the last fight. Isaac Chilemba, not a guy known for getting stopped, as far as I'm aware, and a good boxer from the outside. This is what I'm saying about the outside. Kovalev did have trouble trying to figure Chilemba out. He won the fight, but it didn't look as good as he usually does. You can't always get the stoppage, and that was a good learning curve for Kovalev. Is so what he could face against Ward. The difference with Ward is he's the type of guy he can do inside and out. He's versatile. He's probably one of the most versatile guys in the game. So he'll be back on the ropes 1 minute, and the next minute he's up on your chest. And that's something that he's got that I think will win him the fight. Is that he can step back on the ropes and evade Kovalev's punches, and perhaps get some quick sneaky counters in there. Use his effective outside game with his speed advantage and his sharpness. But then he can, at the same time, while he slips out laterally, next time he can jump in, get on Kovalev's chest, recognise the opening, try and get a couple of quick sneaky shots in there. He can make it look a bit dirty. He can make it look a bit messy, and he can actually, that's the way to build up points, because he could look like the guy who's doing some work, where Kovalev might be a bit taken aback by, what am I going to do once this guy gets inside? Because I think if he gets on Kovalev's chest a bit, it's going to be unknown territory really for Kovalev, because he's not used to going up against guys who have that ability, especially against a guy like him, to get past the jab and to get inside. So it's gonna be down to Kovalev's jab for him. I think Kovalev's going to have to employ that jab. It's going to win the fight for him if he can be effective with it. It really is. He's got to stop Ward from getting inside and from using that type of game that he loves to use. He's used it so often before, that inside roughing up and messing up of the fight. And from the outside, if Ward stays outside, Kovalev still, that's going to be Kovalev's kind of area, because he can kind of still hunt down Ward and look like the aggressor. Whereas, and as long as he has to be careful with Ward's counters, but as long as he stops Ward from doing a lot of good work, he can look like the guy who's forcing the pace of the fight, and that's going to look in Kovalev's favour. I just think that, people still don't give Ward credit for whatever reason, some reason or the other. I think in this fight we're going to see another, pretty much a masterclass in how to box. It's going to be like a Bernard Hopkins-esque type fight, I guess. And I know that Kovalev knocked Hopkins down, and he actually beat him convincingly, and that's why I say Kovalev can really box, because other guys weren't able to do that to Hopkins. Kovalev did. Okay, that was not. He made it look easy, and that wasn't easy. He said it himself. You don't do that to Hopkins unless you're a very good boxer. Okay, that's a fact. So Kovalev, if he's on his game, Ward's got his hands full. Not just from a power point of view, but from a boxing point of view. You can have a guy who's a really solid boxer who dictates range, good jab, etc., etc. I just think that the versatility of Ward wins the day. I think he'll be able to, as the fight goes on, perhaps not initially, but as the fight goes on, as things get a bit closer, I think that he'll be able to get inside, and he'll be able to use all these tricks and all the techniques to actually to just look better and get up on the scorecards. And we'll see how it goes. But I'm going for Andre Ward to win a decision. I think it's a very interesting fight. I'd certainly give Kovalev a great chance because of his pure boxing ability, coupled with the power that he has. But I think he's going to have to really assert his dominance on the fight, and he's going to have to show Ward power early, to do it. So I'm going for by decision. Thanks for watching. This is Boxped. I'm out.